The xenobiology lecture hall fell silent as instructor Thel Van wheeled in the containment unit. 200 students from 47 species shifted nervously in their seats, their various forms of anxiety manifesting in chittering mandibles, twitching antennae, and the rapid color changes of chromatophores. Only one student remained perfectly still, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Ari Ven had seen this reaction before. Today, Thel Van announced, her crystalline voice resonating through the amphitheater, we will observe behavioral patterns in juvenile Krevnathi. As you know, the Krevnathi are apex predators from the Sigma Draconis system, possessing intelligence comparable to most sapient species, but lacking the neurological development for true civilization. The containment unit hummed as its door slid open. 2 cubs emerged, each the size of a large canine but built like liquid muscle wrapped in midnight blue scales. Their eyes, 6 of them arranged in a crown around their skulls, gleamed with an intelligence that made several students instinctively lean back. These cubs are 12 weeks old, Thel Van continued, her teaching appendages gesturing toward the young predators. At this age, they can already take down prey twice their size. Their pack-hunting instincts are fully developed, and their sensory capabilities far exceed most species in this room. Ari watched as the cubs sniffed the air, their heads swiveling in perfect synchronization. He'd read about Krevnathi in the archives. Humanity had encountered them during the early expansion years, before the Galactic Council had recruited Earth into their fold. The reports had been interesting. Now, Thel Van said, deactivating the neural dampeners that had kept the cubs docile, we will observe their natural behavior in a controlled environment. Please remain seated and silent. Any sudden movement could trigger their predatory response. The cubs stood motionless for a moment, processing their new surroundings. Then, slowly, deliberately, they began to move. They walked past the front row, where 3 Valorian exchange students sat with their defensive spines half raised. The cubs didn't even glance at them. They padded past a cluster of Metherian scholars, whose gelatinous forms had instinctively compressed into defensive spheres. The predators showed no interest. Row by row, they descended through the lecture hall, ignoring the 100+ potential threats and prey items that surrounded them. Every student they passed exhaled in relief, their evolutionary alarm systems screaming that they'd just escaped death. Ari didn't move. He simply watched with curiosity as the cubs approached his section of the hall. The smaller cub reached him first, its 6 eyes fixed on his face with an intensity that would have paralyzed most species. It sat down directly beside his desk, its tail curling around its body in a posture that Ari recognized from the behavioral studies he'd read. The second cub, larger, bolder, came to his other side. This one, whom Ari would later learn was called Korik by the handlers, did something that made Thel Van's crystalline structure resonate with shock. Korik placed his massive head on Ari's lap. The lecture hall erupted in confused murmurs. Several students actually fled, their survival instincts overriding academic curiosity. Thel Van approached slowly, her sensor organs extended in disbelief. This has never happened before, she said. Mr. Ven, are you using any pheromones? Chemical attractants? Some kind of technology? Ari shook his head, gently scratching behind what he assumed were Korik's auditory receptors. The cub made a sound somewhere between a purr and a rumble, pressing closer. No, instructor, nothing like that. Then, explain this behavior. Krevnathi cubs are documented to be hostile toward all unfamiliar species. They should be attempting to establish dominance or test you as potential prey. Not this. Ari looked up at his instructor, then around at his fellow students, most of whom were watching from behind their desks as if he were handling an armed explosive. Permission to speak freely, instructor? Thel Van gestured affirmatively, though her attention remained fixed on the unprecedented scene. I've noticed something during my time at the academy, Ari began, still stroking Korik's scales. The Galactic Council species, no offense intended, seem to categorize everything into strict boxes: predator, prey, threat, non-threat. You've built your entire civilization around avoiding conflict, around creating systems where everyone has their place and stays in it. He paused as the smaller cub nuzzled against his other hand, seeking attention. Humans are different. We're persistence hunters, yes. Predators, absolutely. But we're also pack bonders. We domesticated wolves when we were still living in caves. We befriended creatures that could tear out our throats, because we recognized something in them. A willingness to trust, to cooperate, to be part of something larger than themselves. Korik's 6 eyes had closed to slits, the predator completely relaxed despite being surrounded by dozens of potential threats. These cubs aren't just looking for prey or establishing dominance, Ari continued. They're looking for a pack. And I think they recognize that in me. Not fear, not aggression, but the possibility of belonging. Thelvan was silent for a long moment, processing this information through her crystalline logic matrices. The Krevnathi homeworld, she said slowly, was quarantined after first contact, because we deemed them too dangerous to integrate. They remain there still, a species of incredible potential locked away because we saw only the predator, never the possibility you describe. Ari met her gaze steadily. Maybe that's the difference between humans and the rest of the galaxy. You see predators and prey. We see potential family. Korik chose that moment to roll over, exposing his vulnerable belly in a display of absolute trust. Several students gasped. The smaller cub mimicked the gesture. Both predators completely at ease with the human who had somehow spoken their unspoken language. In that moment, in that lecture hall on a space station orbiting a distant star, something shifted. It was small, perhaps insignificant in the grand scheme of galactic politics, but Instructor Thelvan would later write in her report that she had witnessed something profound. A human doing what humans did best, taking the dangerous, the wild, the supposedly irredeemable, and finding friendship where others saw only fear. The lecture never did resume that day. But Ari Ven learned something more valuable than any textbook could teach. That sometimes, the greatest strength isn't the ability to dominate or destroy, but the courage to extend trust where others see only danger. And Korik, in his own way, learned that some two-legged creatures with strange, flat faces could be pack after all.